Hello, welcome to Adventures with Scripture. I'm Carolyn. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. We are going to be starting the book of Daniel, and I'm excited. But full disclosure, there are a couple of names that I am struggling with. And although I have listened to how they are supposed to be pronounced, I still catch myself stumbling. So I would like to apologize in advance. I have tried many different ways to make sure that I don't mess this up, but I probably will. So once again, I appreciate your patience, your time, and understanding, and we will get started. The book of Daniel did take place around 605 BC when King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon invaded Jerusalem. During the third year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah and permitted him to take some of the sacred objects from the temple of God. So Nebuchadnezzar took them back to the land of Babylonia and placed them in the treasure house of his God. So we already have so much going on in the first two verses. So Nebuchadnezzar has already besieged against Jerusalem. And so we're seeing the fall of Jerusalem. And then Nebuchadnezzar goes through and he takes these treasures out of the temple of God and takes them back to Babylon. And he places them in his temple of his God, which are pagan gods, which we'll end up reading more into that as we proceed forward with this. And when he places them in his temple, this symbolizes like a victory over the ancient world. But do keep in mind one thing: Babylon did not defeat God. As we read, God allowed that to happen. And then the king ordered Ashpenaz, his chief of staff, to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Select only strong, healthy, good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are well reversed in such branches of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal place. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchen. They were to be trained for 3 years, and then they would enter the royal service. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the 4 of the young men chosen from the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah was called Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, Azariah was called Abednego. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine that was given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. So, as we see, just from verses 3 through 7, Nebuchadnezzar orders only the best for the young men from Judah. And he has chosen only the best. He wants them to be strong and healthy, good-looking young men. They have to be able to be very gifted, very smart, because he wants them trained for his royal service. I'm going to assume that's like his military. And as we see, they went through and they started changing their Hebrew names that honored God. And so I actually looked up in Hebrew what Daniel means, and Daniel means God is my judge. And so, does anybody know why they went through and changed all the Hebrew names? That's right. It was to reshape their identity and their loyalty. And then we see in verse 8, which is one of the most important verses in the chapter, and that's the king's food. May have been problematic for their diets. It could have been offered to idols. It could violate the Jewish diet laws. Eating it symbolizes like full acceptance of the Babylonian culture. But to me, Daniel's decision shows that he has chosen obedience, even being in a foreign land. So keep in mind, Daniel did not rebel and get aggressive. He asked respectfully for another option. He stayed faithful, but faithfulness, I can't even pronounce faithfulness. Faithfulness doesn't always mean confrontation. It often means wisdom and courage together. So we are going to go ahead and let's see, where did I leave off? I left off on 9. Is that correct? Yes, I did. I'm sorry, because unfortunately, as you see, 8 and 9 are both in blue. I probably should have highlighted that a different color, so it threw me off. Now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. But his response, I am afraid of the Lord, the king, who has ordered that you eat the food and wine. If you become pale, thin, and compared to the other youths your age, I am afraid that the king would behead me. Daniel spoke with the attendant who had been appointed to their staff to look after Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Please test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water, Daniel said. At the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to other young men who are eating the king's food. Then make your decision in the light of what you see. The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. So as we see, God causes the official to show favor and kindness to Daniel. And then Daniel wants to eat only vegetables and drink only water. As somebody that drinks a lot of water, I can respect that. And I couldn't tell you the last time I've had wine. It's actually been years. So Daniel talked about, or had given the proposal of waiting and just doing this for 10 days, a special diet. and see where it leads them. But this test, it required faith, because refusing the king's food could result in a really horrifying punishment. And nobody wanted to be punished. And you can't blame them. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the food and the wine provided for the others. God gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom. And God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meaning of visions and dreams. So as we see, just reading, which I actually read further, but just between 15 and 16, I'm going to mark this. I should have marked this instead of just reading through it earlier. No, this pen doesn't seem to want to write on there. Maybe I have a different one. Good. I couldn't tell you, many years ago I did some studies in here, and for whatever reason I did not change up the color like I normally do. So we see Daniel and his friends are healthier, they're stronger than the others. So they are allowed to continue with this diet because it's obviously working for them. And this shows that obedience to God often leads to unexpected blessings. And I would say that that is a true blessing. And then when we look at 17, where God gave Daniel and his friends special knowledge for learning and wisdom. And then Daniel gets that special gift where he can interpret meanings of visions and dreams. Let's see, we're going to go ahead and when the training period ordered by the king was complete, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians or enchanters in his entire kingdom. Daniel remained in the loyal service until the first year of the reign of King Cyrus. So when we look through 17, which I had kind of read past that, to verse 20, God gave Daniel and his friends, as we discussed, the knowledge, the learning, the wisdom that he received, the extra gifts of understanding. And to me, this shows true wisdom comes from God, not human services. And then Daniel remained there until the first reign of King Cyrus. And this shows that Daniel served through multiple empires. His faithfulness lasted for approximately 70 years. My goodness, 70 years under these pagan beliefs. So one of the things that we did a lot in Revelation was themes, so I thought I would continue on with that. I hope everybody enjoyed those. Even when Jerusalem fell, God still guided history, as we see throughout different scriptures, throughout the Bible. And I know that we're only technically starting the second book together, and thank you again for that, being with me. We will see over and over and over again that God always controls what's going on, even though we don't always understand. So the second thing is, Daniel lived in a pagan society, but he did not compromise his faith. And that's important. You can be around a whole bunch of donkeys. It doesn't mean that you're not the horse. The Babylonians tried to change their names and their culture, but they still remained loyal to God. Daniel stood firm without rebellion or anger. He acted wisely and respectfully, and that's important because he could have, it could have went a lot worse. He could have went through a lot of torture. But God knows his heart, just as God knows your heart, my heart, and everyone's. So even if somebody can seem one way but actually be another, and meeting them you would not know who they really are, don't worry, God knows exactly who they are. And then the last one, God rewarded their obedience with wisdom, favor, and influence. And I would like to take this time again to thank you so much for putting up with me stumbling through this. I promise I will work so much harder that I will not stumble getting into more of the chapters, because I will become more and more rehearsed with these names. So I so appreciate you guys. I hope you all have a very blessed day. And I will be praying for everyone. Please comment, like, and subscribe.